What does more look like for you? Have you ever thought about it? I've had platitudes ingrained into my subconscious, like you should be thankful for what you have already, and other platitudes that seem completely at odds, like reach for the stars. I'm not sure if it's a culturally educated thing or if it's more universal, but for whatever reason, throughout the course of my life, I've been afraid to ask for more. Hey, family, thanks for stopping by today. I'd like to talk to you about this concept of more if you have a few minutes, and how a movie theater completely rewrote the rules for me. So I was going to high school around the time when the Lord of the Rings movies were releasing in theaters. They had one every year, to my recollection. And I'm pretty certain we were on movie 2 at this point, and we had a local theater that was maybe 10 miles away from us. There was a segment of the student body. It was a pretty small school. I think there was maybe under 300 people total in this high school, right? Just over 80 in my class particularly. But there was this little segment, little pocket of us nerds who were really obsessed with the Lord of the Rings movies and just fantasy in general. And I remember the first one was so successful that, the second movie was a big event. And my local theater ended up doing a midnight showing on the release. I'd never been to a midnight showing personally at this point in my life, but everyone was getting really excited about it in my friend group, Well, I also happened to have a couple of teachers who we were kind of close with, right? I had a computer science teacher and I had a literature teacher who were each kind of, as you might expect, in this sort of fantasy kind of fan group with us. So we all made this sort of pact that we would meet up at the movie theater and go see the movie together on the midnight show and sit together and kind of nerd out. I was really excited about this, not only to spend some time with my friends, but to also do this really cool midnight thing, staying up late. And I was seeing it with teachers, right? I was seeing it with grown-ups. I felt like I was a part of this collective that was really dimensional and kind of interesting at that point in my life. Well, it was really interesting to figure out who was going to sit with who in this process because you only had a couple of options to your left and right. We got there early. We were near the front of the line. So we had kind of the run of the place by the time we got in there. It was obviously a packed house at that point. And I end up gravitating to my literature teacher for some strange reason. We weren't the closest of friends or anything, and literature wasn't even really a particularly strong subject for me. He was also a coach in sports, so maybe that had something to do with it. There was some cachet, dimensionally there. But anyway, we got our tickets and we're going up to the concession stand, right? And my literature teacher goes first, and I watch him grab his bucket of popcorn and his candy. And then something completely fascinating happens. He puts his order in, and then he asks the cashier for a empty cup filled with butter. This blows my mind. I'd never even conceptualized, going to the movies back then, you ask for your popcorn, they ask you if you want butter, and you say, yes, please. And everyone has whatever approach they have when they're given butter on popcorn. You take what you get, essentially, right? Some people do the layered approach where they dip the layers in, then they do the butter and more layers, more butter. And if you get that person, you are thanking your lucky stars. Like, yes, I'm going to have an amazing bucket of popcorn here on my hands. Most of the time, though, you just get the people who dump the popcorn in there and they just do it on the top. And if you're lucky, they'll do a decent helping, but sometimes you'll even just get a couple of squirts and thank you, next. And I always found myself really disappointed getting my popcorn in those circumstances, knowing that I was going to have to try to shake the bag and I was going to have to try to pick around and try to distribute that butter as generously as I possibly could to get a little bit of taste of butter for as long as possible. Inevitably, though, you get to the halfway mark of the bucket and it's just dry and stale and cold at that point and a little dissatisfying. My teacher, though, he recognized this problem, right? And he had already devised a solution. And he did this like he does this all the time. Like, this is just how he does orders at the movies. I get my bucket of popcorn, I get my box of candy, and I get my empty cup filled with butter. And the concession person didn't even bat an eye. They just fill this cup with butter. I mean, it's different today probably because you actually can serve your own self the butter on the popcorn. Back in those days, that was a completely novel concept. So I'm kind of staring in awe as my teacher leaves, for the movie. And I do my standard where I get my popcorn and I just take whatever they give me and I head on over to the the theater and I end up sitting next to my teacher. And it's a great movie. I'm paying attention to all the pomp and circumstance around it. Some people have dressed up in wizard garb, and some people have the giant hairy feet, And I find myself, I'm taking it all in. I'm enjoying the movie, but I am just fascinated with my teacher who's sitting right next to me. In the drink holder, he's got this completely filled cup of liquid, oily butter just sitting right between us, right? He's got his giant bucket of popcorn. He takes a handful, he dunks it, and he puts it in his mouth. He does this for the whole movie. Every bite is completely saturated in the most luxurious, oily, salty butter. Every bite he takes, I'm just imagining the incredible experience he's having. And to make matters worse, the butter is sitting right next to me, right? And I got my dry single pump bucket right next to him. And I just find myself wishing so urgently that I could just reach over and have some butter. I never did ask if I could have a little bit of his cup of butter. Firstly, I thought it would be kind of weird to share butter with your teacher. And secondly, I think I was still just trying to even conceptualize it in my mind that this was an approach you could take. I think a lot about that story, and I'm never sure why. I just woke up today thinking about it, just randomly. I think it has something to do with this notion of understanding what there is available to you and knowing yourself enough to know what you want and being confident enough to move things out of the way to figure that out for yourself. So I might encourage you to think about your own circumstances for just a moment and imagine where in life you might be best served by having a little extra butter. And I have another story about one of my childhood memories, actually my earliest memory, that I think would be a really great next step for you if you still got some time. It's right over here when you're ready. Love you, family. I'll see you over there.